Yo, so I've had some time to process my feelings over what has happened over the last year. This is my second year in college, and I went into it wanting to experience a lot of things. I think I've talked about this roadmap before, but when you are a freshman at any college or high school, your first year is about exploring your interests, right? That's about finding what is interesting to you. But realistically, that first year is about finding your footing. So you need to know what coursework is like. You need to know what being in your high school or your college is like, what friends you want to surround yourself with, who you want to be as a person. There's a lot of identity things shifting. There's a lot of lifestyle changes shifting. So first semester really about finding your footing, and then second semester really about some getting some sort of consistency, right? Getting into a routine, having your boundaries established, having your identity established, that those important things that happen before you start extending yourself. And then that second year, sophomore year for most people is when you start branching out into clubs. That's when you start spreading yourself thin a little bit. That's when you start expanding socially, because you have an idea of what your identity is supposed to be, but you don't actually know how that feels. You don't know who you want to be in the very physical sense of, I have this feeling and I also have these experiences that back that feeling of, I want to continue to do this. I want to continue to explore in this direction. I have an idea of how I get from the person that I want to be to actually becoming that person. And that's usually your sophomore year. For me, that's like when I really started getting involved in the sports and the leadership and building a community or building a friend group of people that supported me and my goals, and starting to pick and choose a little bit. And then, unfortunately for college, this experience for me, that is, those two got merged. My second and my third year. Third year, where you're supposed to really hunker down on these leadership positions, you start becoming like president, VP, or you're starting your own like company maybe or you're really getting into career search, or you're starting to pioneer your own career. You already have all these ideas of where you're supposed to be and who you want to become and what actions you need to take, and you're honing in on those actions. And that sometimes comes at the cost of people. And that all happened over the second year for me, where I not only got really involved in leadership this year, but I also got uninvolved in certain leadership, got more involved in other areas, gained a lot of friends, lost a lot of friends. And that's a big jump for me. But looking back on it, and I don't think I've talked about this like false idea of closure, but I got what people will consider closure, right? I went into the role, I had an idea of what I wanted to do in the role, I executed on that idea, and then I'm like, this is good enough. There's nothing else that I want to do. And that's pretty good, you know? I'm like, I look at that and I think I did good enough. I'm like, there's everything that I wanted. I didn't have anything else that I wanted to do, except, as a lot of perfectionists know, there's always that feeling of things could be better. Humans are constantly developing, and there's this like pipe dream of mine where I want to make something which just can't be improved upon within the parameters of what we have at the moment. But realistically, that's never going to happen. There's always going to be a way that we can expand human knowledge, that we can develop on something that existed. And of course, you're not going to make something perfect because you are in college and you don't have all knowledge. But I had this club experience where I'm like, I have accomplished like a level of sufficiency. I've made something. I've connected people. I've brought the people that I wanted to in the room. I've checked all these boxes, etc. And I'm like, I'm happy enough with where things are at. And there's nothing much else that I want to do within this particular role. And that was a self-discovery moment for me, because I was somebody who always wanted to become the president. I wanted to lead the most people. I wanted to have the most stunning thing on my resume. And I took a step back. I took a step down to work on something, to connect with people, work on less on managing people and more on giving back to the community in a way which was more manual, which was less high level. I wanted to really connect with people. And that was new to me, where I stepped down instead of stepping up. And I still am like doing the leadership, but it's just within a different context. And that was something that was like a shocker to me, where I not only had this closure where I wasn't limited by the amount of time that I had within the certain area. Like, I was VP of a different club in my high school, and I had like the captaincy for one of my sports teams, and there wasn't and I wanted to do more things, but I was just out of time, right? Like I wanted to be like still doing my sport in college. I wanted to compete on the national level in my club, and I just couldn't. I just ran out of time, and I wasn't good enough. And I didn't. You get stuck with that feeling of what if, and I didn't have that feeling with this club, at least so far. But like I've been out of it for like a month, and that's new to me, right? Like that's like a wake up call. It's a big moment, and you go from that to this different club where there was an election, and I've never lost an election in my life. Like if there's something that I've wanted, I've always gotten it, and I've been really outspoken about it, and I get people on my side, and I've always done that in a very physical, very tangible way, where I appear very qualified. I have the best pitch compared to other people, and I got it because I was the best available, right? And this is a social organization, so it's like different, right? The criteria for success are not like super physical, where it's not just like your resume or what score you got in an exam or how well you know the material. Like some of it is just if people believe in you, if people like you, if you can connect with people, and that's not something which you can really like put down on paper, right? That's something that's reflected by a majority vote, so to speak. So majority vote comes around and I don't get the position, and I'm left sitting there reflecting on my time, because I looked at the time that I put into this club so far. I was already on the leadership and I was going for a higher position, and I was pretty happy with where I was at. I feel like I grew a lot as a person. I broadened my horizons, and I was starting to feel like I didn't really have a place, or there was nothing else that I really wanted to do outside of that big election thing that I stood up to. And when you didn't get it, that hope, that idea of what you wanted to do in the role kind of like disappeared really suddenly for me. And I was kind of just left there like in a very weird state, by the way, because I was just watching. It's a social club, so it's very celebratory. I mean, I was in an all-white fit, so it's a celebration. And I was watching basically this person who got elected instead of me and all those other people like doing a victory lap of like taking photos of these people. And in a very weird way, I felt slighted, because this is something that I felt before, because I'm someone who tries to give unconditional support. But I felt like my time was less valuable than the other people there, because all these people were doing the celebrating and taking pictures with all these like alumni and stuff. And I was just sitting there watching them, and I was told to wait just to take one photo. I was watching all these people take hella photos with other people. And I was just sitting there waiting, and they come in, they check in, and they're like, yeah, we'll get the photo soon. And then soon turns into like almost 2 hours. And I was just like, I felt like my time wasn't valuable, which was not a great feeling. And the other part of this is I kind of had this wake up call where I just didn't feel like I was somebody who fit within the context of the club. And that's a weird thing, because you were chosen to be a part of leadership by somebody who was chosen by the club, which means to a certain extent like you had fit. But maybe it was just the realization that like you could pitch it a certain way and then your values didn't align because it wasn't what I was used to. Maybe it was the addition of me feeling slighted in that particular moment when I was used to being included. Or there was also just the fact that I was like, I was thinking about the reason why I didn't know that many people in the club. And it was mostly because I lacked a lot of respect for their lifestyles. And also, I have a very different narrative than a lot of these people. A lot of them were active in the Filipinx community, and a lot of them were active in their communities in high school in a different context. Not a lot of them were athletes. Not a lot of them were super academic, where they had that pressure to always succeed and to go above and beyond and to do the college courses and to be the super go-getter. A lot of these people had struggles outside of their extracurriculars and their academics, in which they had pressure that was like financial or from their families or from immigration, like etc., which I couldn't relate to at all. And I come from a position of privilege. I come from a generation of immigrants that's like so far detached, where it's not, you don't feel it in your day-to-day life, right? Like your grandparents, for example, they might have been the immigrants, and your parents got a normal American life, and then you got like a super standard American life. And I look at it from that lens, and it's just like person with privilege performs actually exactly as expected, and that's kind of my narrative. And when I was sitting here, kind of like sulking at the end of like after waiting for like 90 minutes just for a photo, and this is my last event for the club, and I feel like this is the last event, and there was other things going on in my mind where I didn't feel like I was providing the experience that people wanted within the club, because I'm not a typically social person within the college context. I'm like, I'm not super big on the parties and the ways that people party and the ways that people sedate themselves and the ways that people make themselves more accessible for people. That makes them more relatable. I think I'll just put it that way. Where I'm like, I don't really like compromising my values. I don't like supporting people unconditionally that I don't already like and support their values. And I don't like endorsing the behavior that I'm personally not a fan of just to make you feel comfortable and accepted. I think I was talking to my parents about this, and I described it as there's some people that feel like they're obligated to my acceptance because society accepts them. And because it's societally acceptable, because it's socially acceptable, doesn't mean that I'm going to be okay with it. Which sounds like a really weird thing, but it's socially acceptable to drink and to drink underage. And that doesn't, and a lot of people find it socially acceptable to smoke socially and nicotine. And they know it's bad for them and they do it anyway. And there's a rabbit hole behind a lot of the substances that people use and the sleep deprivation that people are used to and the lack of exercise that people do and the stress that people put on themselves. And like, none of these things are good for us, you know? And I don't want to accept that. And because you know better, you should do better. And it's not, of course, it's not that simple. But we should be approaching things where if we know that it's better for us, we know that this thing's bad for us, that we should try to not do it. At least try, you know? Like, we should be trying our best. And a lot of people just don't. Like, let's be honest, they just don't. And I don't want to endorse that behavior. So I see all of this within that context, and I'm like, this is why I don't really like know the people so well, or know a lot of people, or have a respect for a lot of people, and they still go on to do amazing things. The people who party and the people who got the straight A's and locked in, like, they're probably gonna end up in like pretty similar jobs, but that's besides the point. I'm like, that's not the lifestyle that I want to live. And I look at this community, and I look at this little safe haven that I had, which was the leadership that I was team that I was very fond of. And I really enjoyed the experience that I had. And I have this great experience. And I just don't want to do it again, which sounds crazy to me. And I recently cut off a friend group from a different club that I was in. And I said, I don't want to spend time with any of y'all anymore. And that was a really weird thing to them, because they were like, we recently went out. We had a really good time at this situation and this situation, and how come you don't want to be friends with us anymore? And I started seeing these reels about the person that's like super socially aware or super self-aware, and they get shut out like just a little bit, and then they cut people off. But that's how I felt. I didn't feel chosen, or I felt like there was a separation within the friend groups where there was this clear inner friend group that existed before the club context, and then people came to the club and the friend group expanded, but they still got like touchy about the information, or like they have an inside joke that you're not a part of. And maybe some people will be like, you shouldn't feel slighted about that, like they just have this joke and it came up naturally, and then it's like, that's none of your business, or it's not that serious. And of course, but then they start getting on me in the way that I express myself, in the way that I am as a person. And I start to feel like I'm being put in a box. And I start to feel like that I can't be myself around these people. And this is a compromise where it's like, are you an unlikable person? And should you not be around these people? Or are you someone that needs to change themselves to be accepted? And this is another example of my privilege where I'm like, I have a family environment. I have friends at home that have demonstrated to me that I am a person that is lovable and is worth being chosen. And that doesn't mean I'm worth being chosen to everyone. And this is the prime example when people like to bring up, like, oh, even Hitler had people that loved him. And that might make you like, am I Hitler? But you'll never really know. You're always going to be the villain in somebody else's story. And I'm like, this is just not useful information for me. But knowing that I have the people that do care about me and do love me, and that it's okay for me to be myself, is like enough for me. And I'm not going to worry myself. Maybe I will a little bit about if I'm the Hitler in somebody else's eyes or if they're the Hitler in my eyes, because I'm like, I can't control how they think of me. Of course, I can stack the deck in my favor and make myself a more likable and acceptable person, but I don't like some of the qualities that makes me that person. I don't really want to become this person that's accepted by more people or always bend the knee to somebody else's expectations, because I'll never be happy. I don't know if that's something which is self-explanatory, but I hope that in some time in which you're exploring yourself and your life, that you reflect on the fact that if you always try to appease everybody around you, you're eventually going to end up with a conflict of interest in which one person's values conflicts with another person's values, and you can't appease them both, right? Like, for example, some people want to smoke socially, and other people value their lungs to the point where they don't even want to smoke once. And to connect with people and make yourself more accessible, you have to smoke. And to connect with these other people and appeal to their values and their tradition and their morals and their system, you can't smoke. And you have to choose one or the other. And it's just as simple as that, where I'm like, it's up to you to define your own success, to define what's acceptable for you, to define your own boundaries. And this was my moment where I'm like, I'm going to do that. And it was weird because I'm used to like friend groups blowing up, you know, or having this like huge beef, or these people very explicitly like confront you and we're like, I don't want to hang out with you anymore. Like, breaking off friendships or burning bridges is always a very explicit and like dramatic, and I just should say touchy thing. It's a very deliberate effort, because that means people have been having problems for a while where they don't want to just let their friendship fizzle out. Like, they need to physically break it off. And for me, I mean, this is just coming at the end of a year where I'm like reflecting on like what has been giving me the most value, like what has been making me happy, like what friendships do I want to invest in. And even though they do have some value, even though there's more value I could bring, and even though there's more effort that I could put into something and there's areas that I could improve, I just don't want to. And that was like the wake up call where I'm just like, I don't like these people. I don't like the values that I've seen. Or maybe I did have a really good experience at times, so that doesn't outweigh the feelings that I have. Or I think this is the better explanation. There's just other things that I want to do more. It's not that this is necessarily bad, but I'm like, I want to diversify my eggs, and I have a limited amount of eggs. And that's been a weird feeling to try to articulate, because it would have been very different if I got that position. It would have been very different if I haven't had this experience before, and for this other club that I broke off just because I didn't respect a lot of the people and I wasn't gaining a lot in the position, that I might have stayed. Or maybe if the leadership was more valuable, I would have stayed. And I didn't. And part of it is, yes, of course, I didn't have a vision of what else I want to do in the role. But other part is, I'm like, I've done it before. And with that experience, I can reflect on, I'm like, I've taken the opportunities to grow. And I don't see much more opportunities for me to grow within that context. And when I said that, somebody told, and the other part was, I'm like, I had mentors in these roles, and I'm not going to have mentors in the next year. I'm expected to know what to do. And that's a scary thought. But the other part is, I should know what to do because I've already done the thing. But my context has changed because I have a different boss. And also, I have changed, where there was an idea of what I wanted in the role, and there's an idea of what somebody else wanted, and I'm going to put pressure on that person. And I know I'm going to put pressure because I have an idea of how things are supposed to be. And this person also has an idea of how things are supposed to be. And that doesn't mean that we are going to see things the same way. And I think a really important part of getting involved in leadership and trusting somebody else's vision, who is a leader above you, is that you have low expectations of what the role is. You don't have an idea of how things are supposed to be or be executed or could be improved. Now I do, because I've been in the role for a year and I don't have the platform to make those changes. And I could, of course, suggest, but that's not really my place. It's not like a feedback-oriented environment. It's a top-down organization in terms of leadership structure, which means that you kind of just got to take it from your boss. Pause. So I was just like, I'm going to put pressure on these people. And it's a role in which I should be providing unconditional support because we're in this together. And I don't think that I can do that. And in the other club that I just really didn't respect the people in, I was, first of all, doing a whole lot of nothing. But second, I just don't like the people. And I can't provide them unconditional support. Because I realized that that doesn't really exist for me. I'm like, I'm not going to give unconditional support to somebody who's running themselves into the ground. I'm like, we need to stop them at some point. Some people need pressure. Some people need boundaries set for them. And if I don't already believe in your beliefs, I just can't support you at all. That's just something I realized for myself. So a lot of mix of things that happened over the past year, but I'm going into my next year more lonely than I was. This is my third and likely final year. More lonely than I was in my first year. And that's a weird thing for me because in my first year, I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to find people who enjoyed me for who I was. And I was really struggling to navigate if people were laughing at me or with me. And looking back on it, I found a great group of friends off of RIP. And I'm still in touch with them. Even if we all kind of got busy, as college does. It's I still would really like to hang out with these guys, and I'm rather fond of them. But I didn't feel that same way about a lot of these people that I met in my second year. And I think I gained maybe 3 friends in my second year, that stayed. Compared to, I lost all the friends that I had on my dorm from my first year, basically. I barely see them. And in my second year, I hung out with a lot of people, and I really only feel like I'm going to be keeping 3 of them, because some of them are graduating, some of them were losing the context in which we met each other, and I'm like, yeah. So at least that's where I'm at. So yeah, that's the big thing wrapping up my second year. Is just it's okay to have boundaries, and it's okay to not be accepted by everyone, and it's to have that faith, have that trust that you're doing the right things, and to believe in yourself even when a lot of people aren't following your same path. And the same function that just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that it's right, doesn't mean that a lot of people have to be following your path in order for you to be the right path. It's you know what's best for you, and that's something which I've really had to intentionally tell myself to believe in. And I'm coming from that with a perspective of I might be failing 2 classes. I'm coming from that with a perspective where I'm my definition of success no longer includes being the straight A student. And that's not just a function of the fact that I'm not doing good on my classes, but it's also a function of the fact that I have privilege that enables me to not need that compared to other people, which is weird, right? But I'm if I'm an international student who needs the scholarship or who's got my visa on the line, I'm I can't afford a gap semester or to be reinstated or to lose my student status, etc., because I get deported. Or if I need that financial aid and I need that grade and I need that scholarship, I also can't afford to let my grade slip. But that's not what I am. My parents are paying for it. And it's a mix of being guilty that I'm utilizing this privilege, and other people would kill to be in my position, but they're not me. And my parents worked hard to give me a better life, and they didn't want it to have the same stresses that they had, the same pressure that they had. And I wanted to see where I could go, and I'm not wasting their time by not getting the best of grades. I'm putting that time into other things, and that's the idea of like you have time, but you don't have time to waste. And by getting rid of the stress and getting rid of the pressure, that you allow room for creativity. You allow break time, like rest time. You allow yourself to grow as an individual, not only from stress, but also from opportunity. And there's some studies behind it that say that you'll have a longer life because of that. And that it opens the door for innovation. But I'm not super clear on that right now. Very late at night, I'm just going to stop talking right there. I got all my thoughts out. But a lot of affirmations that I've gotten from this year. And I've had to tell myself again and again that I know what's best for me. And that I'm on my own timeline. I'm already like ahead of work in school. So like I really shouldn't be pushing myself to get everything right the first time. But I'm like, I don't really want to fail a class. But yeah, I don't know. TBD.